3 years ago, I walked out of this house with nothing. Tonight, I walked back in holding everything they once said I'd never have. The sun was already low when I pulled up to the Hale estate. I parked my car myself. No valet, no greeting. Just the sharp click of my shoes on the stone driveway and the quiet, echoing hush of a place that hadn't missed me. The fountain still worked. The hedges were still trimmed like they were competing with Versailles. It all looked the same except for me. At the front steps, I paused. The same iron doors that had once slammed behind me still gleamed with polish. I remembered that moment. My father's voice colder than the marble under my feet. "You're a disgrace. Don't come back until you're worth something." I pressed the buzzer. A maid I didn't recognize opened the door, gave me a glance that stopped short of recognition, and let me in without a word. No one else came to greet me. No one offered so much as a nod. The house was buzzing with early guests. The kind of people who wore pearl earrings on a Tuesday and spoke in resumes. I didn't make eye contact. Not yet. I had a plan. And a schedule. "Nathan!" Lily's voice broke through the noise like a warm hand on my chest. She rushed over, hugged me tightly. Her perfume hadn't changed. Still vanilla and something floral. Still the only one who meant it when she said she missed me. "I can't believe you came," she whispered, stepping back to look me over. "You look good." I smiled, keeping it soft. 30 suits me. Before she could answer, my father appeared. Alric Hale was exactly as I remembered. Clean-shaven, back straight, eyes like judgment. He wore a navy blue suit like armor and held a glass of bourbon that had probably been refilled 3 times already. "Didn't expect you'd show," he said, not offering a hand. "You know you weren't needed." "I came for Lily," I replied. Then walked past him, feeling the weight of his stare between my shoulder blades. Inside, the warmth was all decoration. Gold accents, floral centerpieces, glass chandeliers. But beneath the surface, the cold was thicker than ever. I found my way to the guest room they'd assigned me and locked the door behind me. From my suitcase, I pulled out a sleek, foam-lined case. Inside were 2 compact cameras, black, discreet, already configured. One I slipped into a floral arrangement near the hallway mirror. It caught the dining room at an angle. The second went inside the birthday gift box I was told to place on the main table. A slim velvet box holding nothing but a decoy card and the lens. No one saw. No one even looked my way. Downstairs, the air thickened. The guests multiplied. Someone handed me a name tag, spelled my last name wrong, and showed me to my seat. It was at the far end of the dining table near the restroom hallway, a place you could leave quickly or be forgotten entirely. I didn't mind. I expected worse. A server walked by, pouring drinks, skipped me, didn't notice maybe, or maybe they did. I watched as glasses clinked and laughter rolled like thunderclouds I'd seen too many times before. Eventually, I wandered toward the dining room wall, the so-called legacy wall, where framed photos of milestones hung in tight, curated rows. My sister's graduation, my brother's medical award, my parents' anniversary trip to Rome, and where my photo used to be, the one from high school when I won the state programming challenge, the last thing they were ever proud of. There was nothing, just a faint square outline on the wallpaper, like a ghost of something erased. I stared at it longer than I meant to, the absence louder than any insult. I didn't speak, didn't ask. I turned and walked back toward the crowd. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. Surveillance system synced, all feeds active. I didn't expect a gift, but I didn't expect public ridicule either. The dining room looked like a catalog ad. Crystal glasses caught the glow of overhead chandeliers. Polished silverware was arranged like weapons. White floral centerpieces filled the room with an artificial sweetness that clashed with the bitterness tightening in my chest. I took my seat, still at the far end of the table, still invisible. They'd placed me next to an elderly aunt who barely remembered my name and a cousin who hadn't spoken to me since I left. Neither offered more than a glance. I didn't blame them. They were trained to measure worth in loud success, in job titles, in whatever fit cleanly onto a LinkedIn header. I didn't give them that. Not yet. Dinner began with clinks of glass and the hum of servers bringing out the first course. Lobster bisque, some kind of microgreen garnish. I didn't taste it. My stomach was still too full of stone. Alric stood, lifting his glass with the pomp of a king addressing his court. Tonight, he began, I want to honor my children. Each of them, for what they've become and what they represent to this family. The table stilled. Heads turned toward him with reverence, some with rehearsed smiles. My mother stared at her napkin. Lily looked down, chewing her lip. My oldest daughter, Emily, a lawyer, recently promoted to partner. Tenacity, brains, and the kind of class this family is proud to carry. He raised his glass. People followed. Next, Michael, our brilliant doctor, saving lives, building a name in cardiac medicine, a man of discipline and compassion. More applause. Another toast. Then he paused. His gaze shifted down the table, toward me. And Nathan, he said, as if tasting something sour. Ah, yes, the one who chose to play on the internet while we built real lives. Laughter. A soft chuckle here, a snort there. One uncle leaned in to whisper something that made his wife smirk. I didn't move. Alric went on. If anyone needs a YouTube tutorial on how to waste potential, Nathan's your man. More laughter now. Louder. My mother gave a forced chuckle, more out of self-preservation than agreement. Lily looked like she wanted to disappear into the seat. I felt the blood rise behind my ears, but my hands stayed still, resting in my lap, fingers interlocked so tightly my knuckles ached. A waiter walked past. He didn't offer me a refill. Alric took a sip of his bourbon, his voice slipping into the drunken cadence that only shows up at moments like this, when cruelty is camouflaged by celebration. We've all had setbacks, sure, but the rest of us moved on, built something. Nathan, he turned slightly, his voice now performative. Still no job, right? At least you're consistent. The laughter this time was tentative. Some didn't join in. The cruelty was too sharp now, but no one stopped him. I lifted my glass. My voice stayed low, steady. I'm working on something. You'll see. That silenced the room. Alric waved me off with a half laugh. Always the mystery man. A child 2 seats away passed me a party favor. A small wind-up toy that barely worked. Its plastic hinge cracked as I turned it in my hand. Broken. Passed the broken one. Fitting. Glances ricocheted across the table. Some amused, some apologetic, most indifferent. But I didn't break. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment linger just long enough for the shame to settle where it belonged. Lily leaned in, her voice low. Are you okay? I'm better than I've ever been. No one noticed him arrive. That's how we built our empire. Quietly. By the time dessert had been cleared and the wine refilled, the house had shifted into a looser version of itself. Jackets unbuttoned, ties pulled loose, people floating between rooms with drinks in hand, voices louder, laughter more casual. The performance of dinner had given way to the performance of posturing. I stood near the fireplace, sipping the whiskey I finally poured myself. The crackle of the logs behind me was the only warmth in the room. Around me, conversations bloomed and wilted. Investment chatter, family gossip, political murmurs no one really cared about. My mother lingered near the piano, smiling thinly at a group of her friends who kept glancing at me like I was a problem someone forgot to solve. Then I saw him. Mark stepped in like smoke. Quiet, subtle, unannounced. No one turned. No one asked who he was. He wasn't wearing anything flashy, just a fitted black button-up and jeans, his sleeves rolled once. Watch simple. The kind of man you'd mistake for a driver or someone's assistant. Exactly how he liked it. He caught my eye across the room. A small nod. I returned it. No smile. None needed. I turned slightly so I could see the moment unfold. A man near the drinks table looked Mark over, raised a polite glass. "Friend of the family?" he asked. Mark smiled. "You could say that." "So, what do you do?" "I run back-end systems," Mark said casually, swirling his glass. "Help people get paid while they sleep." The man blinked, a little thrown off. Like a crypto thing?" Before Mark could reply, another cousin, Tanner, the kind who thought sarcasm was a personality, chimed in. "Another crypto bro, huh? You guys multiply faster than real estate agents." Mark grinned. "Something like that. Although I prefer automation architect." Tanner let out a laugh, clearly not taking him seriously. "Catchy. Sounds made up?" "Most things are," Mark replied, taking a slow sip. "Until you cash the check." I watched the exchange from the edge of the room. No one knew they were talking to the man whose code powered an 8-figure engine. No one knew that the so-called nobody had more equity than everyone here combined. Alric moved through the crowd like a politician, drink in hand, offering shallow chuckles to guests. He passed Mark, slowed slightly. His eyes narrowed. "Bet you two still share a couch in some co-working space," he muttered with a smirk, loud enough for me to hear. Mark didn't flinch. He turned to me instead. "Think it's time?" I finished my drink, placed the empty glass on a side table, and nodded once. "Let's show them." Mark disappeared into the hallway, phone in hand. I stepped forward toward the center of the room where the conversations were already slowing as guests noticed the subtle shift in the air. Eyes followed me as I moved, some curious, some wary. I cleared my throat, just enough to quiet the last few voices. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take 5 minutes of your time. Not for a speech, but a story." They handed me a mic, expecting a thank you. I handed them a mirror instead. The room was dim now, lights softened to a golden hue, the fireplace flickering low behind me. Guests gathered in loose circles, cradling half-full wine glasses, chatting in the way people do when they're waiting for something they think they understand. Slideshow hour, the legacy montage, childhood pictures, maybe a speech from Dad. I stood in the center, back straight, mic in hand. "Thank you all for coming," I said. 30 years is a milestone. I'm told this is usually where I'm supposed to show baby photos, or maybe share a few embarrassing memories. A few light chuckles rippled across the room. My father leaned against a pillar, arms crossed, smirking. My mother stood beside him, unreadable as ever. Lily was closer now, hands clasped, watching me carefully. I let the silence stretch just enough before speaking again. "Instead of baby pictures," I said, "I thought I'd share a different timeline." Behind me, the TV screen lit up. The first slide was simple. The logo for Passive Flow, my company. The second showed a time-stamped image of me, seated in a windowless room, coding at 2:46 a.m. on a Saturday night. Then another, and another, each one marking a step. The early build, investor pitches, first launch, user graphs. People shifted, faces turned toward the screen. Conversations paused. Then came a clip from a business podcast. The host said, "The founder of Passive Flow scaled his platform to over 8 million users in under 3 years, then exited for $47 million. That's the kind of story you only hear in textbooks." I clicked to the next slide, a screenshot of our analytics dashboard. 8.2 million active users. Product uptime, 99.97%. Global reach, 41 countries. Next came the bank screen. Blurred digits, but the totals were clear. Wire transfers, equity distributions, purchase confirmations. The room was silent. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I turned slowly, eyes scanning the room. 3 years ago, I left this house with nothing but an idea and a deadline. While you laughed, while you assumed, I was building. My father let out a laugh, sharp and brittle. "Is this a prank?" he called out. "Because it's getting a bit long." "No prank," I said. "Just the truth. 3 years in the making." I clicked the remote again. The next slide was a legal document. Property title transfer. Hale Estate. A hush swept the room. I bought this house 6 months ago, I said. Quietly. Put it in your name as a gift, Dad, for old time's sake. He stared at the screen, the smirk fading, replaced by something more hollow. But tonight, I added, that changes. Gasps. Audible this time. My uncle, seated closest to the screen, leaned forward to read the file's heading again, as if it would shift into something more comfortable. I stepped off the rug and crossed the floor slowly, each step echoing louder than the last. My hand dipped into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a black envelope, sealed in gold foil. My father didn't move. I stopped in front of him, extended the envelope. It's not a birthday card, I said. It's your eviction notice. The loudest silence I've ever heard was my father realizing he no longer owned the roof over his head. No one moved. The envelope still rested in his lap, unopened. But the truth had already been received. Not by reading, but by the way his shoulders slumped, by the way his breath stilled and his hand, the one that always gripped power like it was oxygen, now barely clung to the edge of his chair. For a moment, the room didn't feel like a party or a home. It felt like the aftermath of a storm. Glasses half full and trembling, eyes wide, a hush that wrapped itself around everyone like fog too thick to see through. Alric stood abruptly, then faltered. His hand reached toward the mic on the nearby stand, but he didn't take it. His fingers hovered, then curled in retreat. Even his voice had retreated into the corners of the room. I didn't move. Then, quietly, my mother stepped forward. Her heels tapped softly on the hardwood as she crossed the room. Not to him, not to me, but to the space between. I knew, she said, voice trembling yet deliberate. I knew he was building something. Everyone turned. I saw him, on that old laptop, on the balcony, every night that first year he left. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't a waste. She looked down, then up again. Her voice cracked. I stayed silent because your father didn't want to hear it. A cold wave swept through me. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't laughed. But she had stayed silent. Across the room, Lily stared at her like she was seeing her for the first time. You knew? She whispered. And still let him get humiliated like that? My mother's mouth opened slightly, then closed. There was no defense in her eyes. Just tiredness. Lily shook her head, stepping back, the betrayal sinking into her with more force than she expected. Mark appeared beside me then, his presence steady as always. He placed a hand gently on my shoulder. It's done, he said, soft enough that only I could hear. You don't owe them anything. But I did. Not money. Not time. Just this moment, the one they never imagined they'd have to witness. My father looked up finally, rage rising behind the emptiness. His voice was hoarse, brittle like old wood. You think this money makes you better than us? I didn't answer immediately. I looked at him for what he was now. No longer a tyrant, just a man stripped of armor. No, I said. But it bought you more time to be wrong about me. He stared at me, trying to summon the old thunder in his chest, but there was nothing left. His hands shook again, this time from something colder than anger. Then came the buzz. He blinked, startled by the sound, then slowly pulled out his phone from his pocket. A notification flashed across the screen, bright in the darkness that had settled around him. His eyes darted over the text. His lips parted, then trembled. No words came out. I already knew what he saw. I'd made the call hours before the party even began. Bank alert. Account frozen. Line of credit denied. The hand holding the phone lowered slowly. He sank into his chair, hollow. They said I'd never make it without them. Then they realized they couldn't survive without me. Morning light slipped through the floor-to-ceiling windows, washing the penthouse in soft gold. San Francisco sprawled below like a city made of opportunity and memory, its skyline a line I used to trace in my mind while coding in borrowed spaces, wondering if I'd ever escape the weight of a name that didn't fit. Now, I lived above it. The room was quiet, just the slow hum of the espresso machine in the kitchen and the occasional tap of my bare feet on the hardwood. I sat on the edge of the leather sofa, scrolling through the same screen I'd been staring at since I woke up. Family group chat. 21 unread messages. Can we talk? Please call Mom. She hasn't eaten since that night. Dad's trying to apply for a loan. The bank rejected him again. It's because of the deed paperwork. Brother, you really left us like that? The last one made me pause. That tone, the entitlement buried in a question, as if I owed them an explanation after they watched me drown for years and laughed when I stopped swimming. I set the phone down without replying. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I walked over to the window and let my eyes rest on the city. Cars moved like veins through its streets, unaware that someone who was once called a disgrace had risen far enough to see the tops of their roofs. Behind me, my old notebook lay open on the table. The one I kept since I was 16. Half doodles, half code. On the inside cover, one line was circled in red ink, written in my younger, sharper handwriting. Be undeniable. A soft ping broke the moment. My laptop screen lit up. New email, subject. From family disgrace to digital tycoon. Your story is changing lives. From a Forbes contributor. I didn't even need to open it to know what it said. The world wanted the story now, but I already had what I needed. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mark. Morning, he said when I picked up. You good? More than good. Didn't hear back after the dust settled. Thought you might be... He paused. I don't know. Regretting it? I walked back to the table and poured myself a coffee. No regrets, I said. I finally stopped carrying weight that wasn't mine. So what now? He asked. I smiled as I looked out at the skyline again. Build something bigger, but without the baggage. A quiet laugh came through the line. That's very you. I opened my laptop again, navigated to our company dashboard. Metrics rising. User count spiking after the anonymous story post started trending. Thousands of people finding comfort in a digital space we built for the overlooked. I clicked over to LinkedIn, started a new post. We're hiring. But we don't accept applications from people who once laughed at our dreams. Though the room had long gone quiet, the impact of the truth still echoed. What began as an act of erasure ended in undeniable presence, not through rage, but through proof, persistence, and precision. Justice rarely arrives with applause. It comes quietly, when the balance tips and those who once mocked must sit in the shadow of their own misjudgment. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, it may arrive late, but it lingers. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't punishment, it's freedom. And the ones who laughed loudest will now live with the silence they created.